It's Bernadette. Dayna loves it when I do that. I am the creator and channel of the Arcana Tarot and Oracle deck. Do you think I know my own deck's name? As well as the publisher of whatismyspiritanimal.com and buildingbeautifulsouls.com. And I am here with my beautiful goddess sister witchy poo, Dayna Winters, who has graciously agreed to do this tarot card meeting series with me, because she is the queen of all things tarot and symbolism and mysticism. And I love her. And she's just a great teacher with just this wealth of knowledge that I know you guys will love and benefit from. And so I wanted to share it with you. And Dayna is a celebrated author. Your books are?
What's the Real Deal? Breaking Through the Misconceptions. Sacred Objects, Sacred Space, Everyday Tools for the Modern Day Witch. You'd think I'd know the name of my own books, right? And the Esoteric Dream Book, Mastering the Magical Symbolism of the Subconscious Mind.
Yep.
Long titles, but definitely diverse, kind of widespread titles and copies. So that's it. I'm pretty humble.
Yeah, she won't tell you they're award-winning books with Schiffer Publishing. No, she won't tell you that, but I will. So I'm telling you they're award-winning books with Schiffer Publishing. So in this video, we are, as evidenced by our swords that you saw in the thumbnail. Mine is actually a Wusthof knife. I invested heavily in great cutlery for my what is going to be a gourmet kitchen at some point. I've got to stop being the queen of takeout. And, during the pandemic, I was like, oh, no. Because the thing I make best is reservations. I was like, oh, no, I've got to cook because I can't live off of, Rice Krispies and bagels, right? So my sister, who really is a gourmet cook, I was like, okay, you got to outfit my kitchen. What do I need? And so she made me buy. So that's my sword. And Dayna had one of her beautiful Athamés, which that is a beautiful Athamé. It truly is. And so, ta-da, we are talking about the Suit of Wands. And so we're going to talk about the Suit of Wands symbolism, its meaning. We're going to talk about the element associated with the Suit of Wands. We're going to talk about what emotions, where it is just in kind of in the terms of your spiritual development in your tarot journey or your client's tarot journey, what season, the numerology. We're going to get into all of that. So grab yourself some iced tea or some wine or water or kombucha or tea or whatever and strap in for the ride. Dayna and I are a little long-winded, but that's because we want you to, well, Bernadette's long-winded. We want you to have a really holistic view of each suit and of the tarot and then of each card as we go through each video because, pardon me, Dayna is truly one of the most learned people in terms of symbolism that I've ever encountered in my life. And so she's also an intuitive reader, but her knowledge of symbolism is just so massive. I don't know how many of us will ever accumulate that kind of depth of knowledge in our lifetime. And whereas I lean toward
like crazy.
Pardon?
You're flattering me like crazy. I'm
listen, you work so hard. My God, I mean, even in your books, it's just so full of symbolism from all different cultures, from every perspective. And that's how you read tarot. I tend to read tarot more intuitively. Yes, I do know the symbolism, but it's not my thrust of focus. My thrust of focus is always to pop open my third eye and quite frankly, make my own life a little bit easier because all I have to do is pop open my third eye and tell people what spirit channels through me. So really, essentially, I'm just a ventriloquist dummy. I'm sitting on the lap of spirit and its hand is up behind me going, so I, we do what each other does just in a little bit of a different manner. And so, our videos are not the 5-minute, 10-minute sound bites that people do just to try to get rankings in YouTube and whatever. They're because we really do have an earnest desire to teach tarot and for you guys to get as much out of these as you possibly can, because every great reading results in another positive experience and positive ball of energy to throw into the world. And Lordy Jesus, we need that right now. This is being filmed during the pandemic time. It's a scary time for people. It's a very emotionally inflamed time. And, we really just want to help everybody with that. But I think it's kind of cool that we are filming during this time, because it's giving me a heightened sense of, oh my God, I got to get this message out there. I've got to have them know everything. They've got to have access to everything. And, that's what clients feel like when they come to you. They're scared, or they're confused, or they're stuck. They might be grieving. And so you're going to deal with all of these emotions, whether you're reading for yourself or a client or a friend or family. So having this broader overview, this holistic look at tarot, the way Dayna and I do in our practices, might be very helpful to you. Or you just may take a look at this and go, no, I'm just going to stick to the meanings that are in the books. Either way, however you do it, it's up to you. I'm sure it's all good, but here we go. So let's get some of the housekeeping out of the way first, Dayna, which is when you're working with any suit in the tarot. And just to remind people, we are using the Rider-Waite Tarot, which is the system that I would venture to say the vast majority of tarot decks are based on. The suit of swords has kind of an overarching meaning. And what is that, Dayna, for you, for the suit of swords? What does it mean overall?
Well, for an umbrella term, it's strife. I think strife, stress, sometimes difficulty. It really is about challenges. But I also look at every sword as something that is double-sided, something that you can reflect on, and something that will help you uncover the truth, even if that truth is painful. So challenges that you may face are things that you need to reflect on. But really, the umbrella term for it is strife, because you will endure some strife in some sense, whether that's emotional, money-wise, whatever the question's related to, difficulties. It is about getting through those difficulties in the most graceful way possible, and trying to learn what you need to learn from that strife when you experience it. But strife is really the umbrella term. So when people see swords, it's like, oh God, strife. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It could just be, means of growing pains you're going through, things of that nature. Really, again, depends on the question. But difficulty, trouble lies ahead, and how you can handle it.
Yep. So one of the things that we tell our students is that different cards, different suits, the major arcana, these will all take on, as you develop a relationship with the archetypes in each suit, in each card, in each arcana, or arcana, some people say it, you'll develop your own relationship. And so, Dayna, that for you, that's the kind of the umbrella meaning, as you said. When I see swords, it's very natural to me, because I'm a triple Scorpio, so I'm ruled by Mars, which is the warrior, right? You see it as, okay, we're going to have to face strife. I immediately go, uh-oh, there's a fight coming. Here come the swords, ladies and gentlemen. Or, like in Sun Tzu, The Art of War, you don't ever wage war until you're absolutely sure that you're already going to win, right? You might need to lay down your sword. And that's how it strikes me when I see the swords. But I love that you see it as a double-edged sword, because all swords are double-edged. And earlier, you and I were having a conversation, as we take a look at the tarot holistically, when we talk about the element that's associated with the suit of swords, what element, what season is associated with the suit of swords, what colors, cardinal directions, that kind of thing. With the swords, what we determined is that the element, when we're saying, what element is associated with the suit of swords, you said
there's two, depending on your perspective. It's like the wands. Wands are associated with fire and air, but a lot of people say fire. I say air, because wands, you direct your will through the air. Fire, you think about swords being forged by fire, so they can be associated with fire. And they, of course, you're manifesting things with swords. You can use them to direct your will as well. So they can also, and fire is fed by air. So you think about both elements being associated with them. So you've got east and south, which can be associated with either or. They're, depending on who's doing the reading, it will depend on the element that you choose. I like to look at it from both perspectives, since they can be swapped. The one answer may not quite fit, and then the other correspondences may make it very clear that that's what the answer is, that's the pieces that go together.
Right. So what we say to kind of wrap that up is the element or elements associated with the swords are
air or fire.
Okay.
Same thing with wands, air or fire.
Okay. And then that would make the cardinal direction associated with the suit of swords
east or south.
Okay.
Use air or fire.
Right. And so
in that order.
Right. And then the season, what season is associated with
spring east, summer for south.
Right.
And any colors you would with east, it's usually white, or sometimes people say light blue.
Right.
Sometimes red for the break of day. Or summertime, you've got red, orange, fiery colors. I mean, and there you can even make that stretch of going blue, green, things like that. But you don't want to go too far because blue is also getting into water and emotion.
Right.
So it really is the colors that resonate with you.
Right.
Fiery colors.
Yep, exactly. So, so when you are starting to see swords pop up in your readings, you just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, and you never know what can happen because I've read, I mean, at this point, between us, Dayna and I have like 60 years of reading experience under our belts. Between the two of us, we literally have read tens of thousands of people. And I always encourage folks to, when they read tarot, be very aware, like very body aware, very emotional aware, because I've read and I've felt cold, or I've read and I've felt hot when it was in the middle of winter and that kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, what season do I normally feel hot or cold or this in? And it may be the season that has to do with that particular suit in the tarot. And I'll find that in that reading, the reason that spirit or the tarot or angels or your guides or whatever it is you believe in, pass that feeling along to you is there's something seasonal or something directional or some kind of element that you need to pay really close attention to in the reading for that client or even for yourself. I don't personally advocate reading for yourself. That's why I call Dayna. But I really encourage people to, you know, maybe you start tasting something bitter or sweet or, you know, sour or whatever. Maybe you start to hear different things that you associate with different, you know, symbolism in the card, or, you know, it can go a variety of ways. And Dayna and I, throughout this, will share some of these stories that are a little kookier, but being open to all of your senses, that's what, that definitely is something that can make your readings more accurate, like way more accurate, and a richer experience, both for you and for the client. So, Dayna, if you see a lot of swords, and we'll talk about also the suit of swords upright and the suit of swords reversed, but if you see a lot of swords in a reading, let's say you pull 10 cards and maybe even just 5 of them, which is half, which is a significant number of them or even more, what are you instantly put on alert for?
A lot of challenges that come ahead. Now, they can, depending on layout, it could also, sometimes I see it, I know this may sound crazy to some. Sometimes if you see a lot of swords in a row, think about a fence. And if it's in reverse or upright, that fence may be being put up and blocking you, or that fence may be dropping down, and that you'll be cutting through problems to remove that block that you've been experiencing. So it can represent blocks, challenges. Sometimes it represents heartache. Sometimes spiritual stagnation. You feel stuck in place. And sometimes, you know, you get into the upper cards there, betrayal on an emotional and or physical level. And sometimes self-betrayal. You betray yourself and you get stuck in place or can't move forward.
Yep. And I, you know, bringing the numerology component into this, you know, not only should you take a look at the numbers in the cards. So for instance, let's say that you pull, pardon me. Ooh, I don't like that card. The 3 of Swords. I hate that card. So I don't use it. No, I do use it. It's not like I lift things out of the deck. But let's say that you pull the 4 of Swords, right? Sometimes it really won't be about the traditional meaning of the 4 of Swords, but about what the number 4 means. I've had that happen many, many times. So, you know, like the number 4 is the most stable number in numerology. All sides are equal, and so it's the strongest. you can't just break one side and,
Right.
you know what I mean? So,
Foundations.
yeah, exactly. So, and building blocks and that kind of thing, take a look at that. But also, if I saw a number of sword cards or any other card, I would count the number of times the number of incidents that they show up. And then I might pay special attention to that. So, for instance, I did a reading for a person one time, and I mentioned the number of 5 of swords because I literally pulled 7 cards for her, and 5 of them were swords. And I was like, statistically, because I shuffle the HE double hockey sticks out of my cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, statistically, this is an anomaly. And I had no choice at that point but to go, I said, are you by any chance really struggling with your spirituality? And she said, yes. She said, I'm really drawn to like paganism and metaphysics and New Age, and my family they're very Christian and very church going. And I finally told my mom, and she told me she was so disappointed in me, and that I need to go to double time to church to save my soul. I'm really afraid I'm going to go to hell because of this. I mean, it was a really big deal in her life. How I got there was the number 5 is associated with earth, air, fire, water, spirit. It's one of the most spiritual numbers in numerology. Mm-hmm. And I saw they're all being swords. I knew there was a struggle, there was a fight. For me, the way I interpret things, the way it came to me, there was no other answer other than this poor kid is having a problem. And indeed she was. Likewise, if it had been 3 or whatever. And then, I also took into consideration how many of them were upright and how many of them were inverted. And that, that's a whole nother story of, you talk about a struggle. Some people in that fight had their swords drawn. Some people had their swords down at rest, metaphorically speaking, so to speak. So when you guys are pulling cards, whatever spread you're doing, the Celtic Cross or the 3-card past, present, future, Dayna, you do this great spread. It's called As Above, So Below. And you lay out, 5 cards? Isn't it? You lay
5
out
cards on the top, 5 cards on the bottom. And that can represent any number of things that you assign to it, whether that's the conscious and the subconscious, someone's immediate thoughts and what, how they'll change over the course of time. And you can look how they interrelate. I developed the system myself. It's just something that works for me.
Yep. So I would say, especially when you're dealing in the minor arcana, and well, I can't really say especially, all the major arcana, they have numbers on them as well. But definitely when you're dealing with cards that have numbers on them, they are numbered in the tarot system. Just, if your intuition tells you to, or maybe even if it doesn't, maybe just get in the practice of, in evidential mediumship, the way that the Arthur Findlay College teaches it, they give you a list. And it's a list of things that it's information that you should try to go ahead and get from spirit, whichever discarnate that you're talking to at the moment. And it's like your checklist. How did you pass? What age? What's your hair color? What's your height? What's your this? What's your that? And what you find over time is you don't have to sit there and think about it. You don't have to go through the checklist. I'm going to ask them question 1. I'm going to ask them question 2. And just like this with tarot, you find that immediately all of that comes to you like, because it's a practice that you get in. But the thing about the practice that you get in, what you're also doing as you establish your deeper relationship with spirit, with the tarot cards, and as I say in every video, and I really encourage people to understand and believe, is that every card is an archetype. Every card is its own personality. It's a real, living, breathing human being that represents that card. And the reason I say that is thought forms are real things. And once you've got, tarot's been around for hundreds of years. And by the time you have literally millions of people focused on whatever card that is, whatever archetype that is, whatever character it is, that has brought them to life in a very real way, just like you and I are sitting here talking. So as you establish your relationship, what you'll find is your helpers on the other side will show up and just poof, there's the information. There's all that's your baseline. Now let's build out from there. So knowing the cardinal direction, knowing the season, knowing the element, knowing the numerology, knowing your color associations, and then also relating those to the chakras, that will also be very helpful, because you might find that you'll get in, I get this a lot when I draw swords. I'll start feeling a burning sensation, or like you know what a paper cut feels like? Something so small is just hurts so badly. Yeah. I'll feel like I've got a paper cut somewhere, and I'll be like, and I'll look at a client and I'll say, did you have a surgery somewhere in your midsection, maybe on the right side, like gallbladder? Yes, I did. Because when I think of swords also, I think of medical as well, because of the caduceus, the medical symbol, surgeries, that kind of thing. But that's a lot of part of me, because I'm the only schmuck in my family who wasn't or isn't in the medical profession, right? So I know the medical world has been surrounding me since before I was born. And so that comes to me a lot, medical stuff. And
a healer, though.
Expand on that, would you please?
Well, because you work with clients and you help them find solutions to your problems, looking at insights, doing shamanistic readings, helping them find their path forward spiritually, you are still helping people heal.
Okay, I see that. And you know what? You had an Athamé, and what does, because, you know, as I think about it, I don't know why this never occurred to me before. What's wrong with me? You know, an Athamé is part of the Wiccan witch practice. And what is an Athamé for? Because as I think of it, you could have Athamés show up. You know, we talked in the Suit of Cups video about how if in your dreams, or just, you know, even in your waking moments, you might see an umbrella, or you might see like a canyon, or you might even see a kiddie wading pool, for God's sake, or a pool. But anything that is a vessel that can hold liquid could be metaphorically considered a cup in the tarot suit. And so that means that Athamés could easily be interchangeable, which makes sense because there are a lot of Wiccan witchy-poo decks out there. And I've seen the art, and I know they use Athamés for swords. I don't know why it just hit me now. But in the Wiccan witch tradition, what are Athamés used for, so that folks are aware of that?
Well, Athamés are really similar to wands, and that's why they're so interchangeable. And I call it a theme. There is no particular pronunciation given to it. So some people say Athamé, I say a theme. You take that and you direct your will with it in ritual. You can open magic circles with it, cut cords, energetic cords of attachment, things of that nature. It's really just a smaller sword. I have a sword too. So, I mean, I like my blade. So I become really dark. I have my blades. I love my knives. But yeah, you direct your will. It's about cutting energy, or, you know, cutting through. You can even create doorways to get into magic circles, or close doorways. And you can do the same thing with a wand, directing your will. So that's what makes them so easily interchangeable, at least in my mind.
Well, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Wands and swords being interchangeable, it makes very, very perfect sense. So, so you guys that are
things, you know, basically cutting into things, you know, it's kind of like sinking your teeth into things. You want to kind of put your, you know, sometimes they take a sword and they'll put it in the earth to kind of mark your spot in a place. Or I really see it as cutting away, chiseling away at things and getting to the core central problem or idea or whatever it is you're trying to dig up. So you're getting that diamond in the rough, you're cutting that gem.
Yep. Okay. Fair enough. So if let's talk about the upright and reversed of the suit of wands or the suit of swords. So if you see an upright card of any kind, but it's the suit of wands or suit of swords, why do I want to say wands all of a sudden? Suit of swords, what does that tell folks?
If it's upright, again, it depends on the card, the number associated, where it's laid out. But an immediate challenge, taking up defenses. Some of them might mean you're protecting yourself. You know, you see the two of swords crossing it over your heart. And it may point to direction. You know, are you going left, right, up, down, north, south, east, west? If it's up, obviously it's north from where you are, or, you know, northeast, depending on direction. It can also mean that you need to reflect As you think about that double-edged sword, you're thinking about both sides of an equation, trying to weigh out options. Of course, then when you get up to the higher numbers, with swords that are upright, it's strife, things hanging over your head. You think it's betrayal, being stabbed in the back. It can be about betrayal, or cutting your own self. Self-sacrifice, trials by fire, because you think about being forged in fire. You get up to the Ace of Swords, though. This is more like being victory, war, battle, winning battles. And if you get into like the Page, the Queen and the King, these are more about emotional movement forward, kind of not quite the most emotionally mature, but you're getting there. You're cutting away, shaping who you are. Really, it's almost like getting to know yourself. Refinery is, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. Refining yourself. The Queen of Swords. This is about truth seeking. You think about the sword of truth, holding it upright. Justice card, you'll see the same thing. The sword being held upright. So it's about cutting away. Even the truth can be very cutting. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to like the truth. So getting to the truth of the matters, the heart of matters, cutting away what doesn't serve you. If it's in reverse, again, the layout, design, whatever, depends on where it is. But reverse, putting down the swords, not taking any action. So it really is a lot of action versus inaction. Making rapid cutting movements, quick action. You think about the Page of Swords in reverse, for example. This is someone who is not sure-footed, someone who is overthinking something, thinking about every potential outcome instead of taking quick movements if it was upright, cutting through the clouds and taking quick action, being impetuous. So it's like this subdued energy of taking action. It doesn't mean you're not taking any action. It may limit the action you're taking or halt the action for a little while or stop it altogether, depending.
Yep. Man, that's all. There are a couple of things in there that I had never really considered. And mostly because, as I've said in this video, and I preach, like preach it girl, is that the relationship that you establish with your deck or decks is the relationship that you establish. Well, I have always been obsessed with all things Knights of the Round Table, fidelity, loyalty, all the ancient ways, right? And so early on when I started reading, I'll never forget this lady, and she taught me, this reading with her taught me a lot of lessons, but she came the same reason that a lot of people come. I want to know if he or she is cheating on me. Mm-hmm. Now, I, as a reader, don't ever come out and say yes or no. Oh no, I'm not going to be responsible for that. Not that I'm afraid to be wrong. I'm not. I mean, that's, and Dayna, you and I talk about that a lot, that if you let your fear of being wrong block your channel, you'll never be that accurate of a reader. You've got to be focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is hearing the information as it's given to you and interpreting the information that's in front of you. It's not about you. Although, yes, a reading shouldn't be detrimental to you, but people are coming to you for a service. You should be offering them that service, and that will make you a much more open vessel, right? So she came, and I had a fair amount of swords upright that came through in her reading. And all of a sudden, I saw the Knights of the Round Table, and I saw them, pledged in their fidelity, position, their loyalty to the king, that kind of thing. And I knew that actually her husband was not cheating on her. She actually was cheating on him. Mm. So I looked at her and I said, I don't know if you know this or not, I said, but in my office and in my estimation, all readers should adopt the same privacy policy as HIPAA or, any kind of therapist or medical professional or lawyer or, people that are sworn to keep secrets. I am that person. And I said, and there's no judgment here. And I said, but I'm being told the only reason you think that you're being cheated on is because you're scared to death that you're going to get busted because you're actually cheating on your husband. This poor woman, she was so upset. And then later I saw a couple of cards where the swords were reversed. And I thought, you know, he already knows, and he's just waiting for her to get through that phase. He has put down his sword, and she called me back a few months later, and she said that reading disturbed her spirit so much. She said, as guilty as she had been feeling, she said, I just felt like the worst person in the world. She said, I had to confess and let the chips fall where they may. And he said, honey, I knew. And he said, I was just hoping that you would get through it, move on, and we could, you know, come to this and talk about it and get therapy and start to heal and all that. And I was like, God, does he have a brother just like him? I'm not a cheater. What I'm saying is that somebody that has that capacity for love and forgiveness, and I'm so committed and, you know, to this marriage and this relationship and you, that I'll walk through the fire to, you know, to make this happen. So for me, when I see swords, I'm instantly on alert for subjects of loyalty, fidelity, truth telling, very Knights of the Round Table kind of things where there's a temptation that person is facing, you know, or there's a temptation that somebody else has had. And that can mean anything. It's not just relationships. It could be money. It could be jobs. You know, it could be anything. So that's what it means a lot for me. And that hasn't really changed over the years. But that is something that I've watched with readers through the years that I teach, is that what a suit means to them today is not what it comes to mean to them 2 years from then or 6 years from then, you know? So be open, you guys, all you wild ones, be open to that. It's an ever-changing, very fluid, very morphing kind of journey, your own journey with your relationship with the tarot. So now that we've talked about what it means upright, what does it mean when you see the Suit of Swords inverted or reversed?
I think we covered that. We were talking about inaction, being subdued.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, not taking action, or it doesn't necessarily mean not taking action. It depends. You can look at it as a block. You can look at it as a subtle energy, or you can look at it as, you know, something. Sometimes imagining what's in the card and seeing it fall away from the card will give you a clue as to what the card means. So if you're looking at the Three of Swords and it's in reverse, the swords are falling out of the heart. So what happens if the swords fall out of the heart? You're left with 3 gaping open wounds that need to heal. And so you're coming to the end of the emotional storm, but there's still time. You're going to still need time to heal and recover. And of course, the number 3 relating to spirit or turning within, or turning to your higher self, however you see spirit, will help that process.
Gotcha. You know, the other thing that I encourage my students to know is when you look at a suit in the tarot, right, it's important to allow yourself, if you ascribe to intuitive tarot at all. Some people don't. Some people are like, they're very elitist. They're very, they're like the Malfoys in Harry Potter. You know, it's got to be pure. And the only way it can be pure is if you absolutely follow the instructions for, you know, the meanings and I'm going to wrap you on the knuckles if you don't follow these meanings. I'm not like that because I'm not really a rule follower, but hey. So you might have guessed.
Take up that sword, you rebel.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, I talk a lot of poo, but I really am I'm the biggest Girl Scout. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. But I always encourage folks to, you know, like if you're in the Suit of Cups, is the water that you see in the cups clear? Is it murky? Is it colored? Is it red? Does it have green in it, like mold, algae? Is it running red with blood of some kind? Is it yellow for
water turned to wine?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Water turned to sea. Water turned to wine. That is great. Oh my gosh! I never thought of that. Brilliant. So when I look, it is really. So when I look at swords, this card again, the Three of Swords. I don't like that card. Really, I'm not a big swords fan. I beg for them not to show up in readings, but they do. But so let's say it's the Knight of Swords, right? Now, okay, we love this card, right? Knights of the Round Table. But I have looked at swords, and the sword was not shiny. It was tarnished. And that's when I knew that people were having a hard time putting up a fight. Case in point, did a reading for a gal one time. I couldn't stop looking at the swords in the reading. There are only two of them, but the tarnish on them was just, I mean, they might have been from the 1600s and rusted clean through. And I just felt weak and depleted, and my heart didn't hurt. It was dead. And I looked at her and I said, well, I asked for permission for all clients. I'm like, do I have your permission to approach personal things, personal subjects that might be, hurtful or open a wound or, shed light in places that you are not comfortable having that light shed? How deeply personal can this go? Understanding that your reading never goes past these walls. And I would say 98% of people will say, yes, I want to hear it all. I said, are you stuck in an abusive relationship? And this guy was beating the ever-loving hell out of this woman. And how I got there was, you can't fight with a tarnished sword that is rusted clean through and is so brittle it's going to break the minute you pick it up. And that feeling of weakness, that feeling of being beaten down so hard that your heart isn't numb, it's not broken, it's not injured, it's not fractured. It is D-E-D, dead, to the point that it's questionable whether you'll ever rise from that again. That's abuse, plain and simple. That's abuse. And I know that because I've been reading for so long. The feeling is the same, whether you see swords and cards or you're just giving a mediumship reading or a psychic reading or whatever name you want to give it, clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyant, and 9 million other terms for it. But I saw the sword as rusty. And so the other thing that I've seen, I've seen swords of varying, like if I look at the Ace of Swords, I've seen that be a very short sword, almost like an appetizer, but butter spreader. And I've seen it really, really long, like a javelin, and that means something to me. How long, because size matters. So,
oh my gosh.
That was funny, Dayna. Y'all know how
it was a good one.
So, but really the length of the sword, but as I say, I get visions. It may not appear that way to you. Also, the feel of the sword in my hand, even if I'm drawing a card, when I draw that card, does it feel heavy to me or does it feel lighter to me? And that's going to be the heaviness of the metal in the sword, or how heavy is the strife that this person is going to carry or that they're going to experience. How heavy is that strife really going to be? Or how heavy do they think it is now, but it's really not all that heavy. It's like, and then that's about perspective. So, where we talk about a sword being, the clue that this is a double-edged thing, there are two sides to every story. There is also the matter of perspective. What is your perspective on this matter, this fight, this fuss, this skirmish? Is it accurate? Is it really all that? Or what if you flipped your script? What if your perspective was different? How could that change the battle? How could that change whether you're going to win or lose? Yeah. Or is the smartest thing to change your perspective, because this is a fight you ain't never going to win, ever, ever, ever. So instead of laying down your sword, or instead of experiencing sour grapes, how can you expand your own spiritual outlook, your own spiritual awakening, your own spiritual experience by looking at it differently, looking at the other side of the sword? Some people will call it the other side of the coin. And when we get to Pentacles, we'll talk about that. But how could you experience it differently, authentically, so that you win because you didn't lay down your sword and you didn't thrust, you didn't parry and thrust, right? Which is the other thing. I've seen fencing. I've seen visions of fencing when we're talking about swords. And those little
I've seen LARPing.
What is that?
Wands when I look at LARPing. You know how you see the 5 of Wands and they look like they're doing a mock battle. My kids used to do LARPing. They would take foam and put it on metal poles and put the duct tape around it, and then they would make pretend those are swords and beat each other up with them. But they wouldn't really actually hurt each other. It's called LARPing.
I never heard. See, this is why Dayna is in these videos, you guys. LARPing. Who knew? So you're talking about the pool noodles, right?
Yeah. You can take pool noodles or like that kind of foam, and then you wrap duct tape around that, and you end up creating this like pole that you can not hurt somebody, but they can play fake swords.
Cool. Well, I have to tell you, talking about the symbolism and meaning of the suit of swords at this particular time when Dayna and I are making this video, we're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and now there's the whole, thing that's going on again that's inflamed everybody. The murder of the poor guy, George. Oh my gosh, his name is escaping me, not because I don't care, but because I've been up since 5 o'clock in the morning and it's now 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm 50 something years old and my memory is just, but the black fella that was killed by the police officer and the whole BLM thing and everything that's going on, all I see when I open up Facebook are swords flying everywhere. It's like each stroke of someone's keyboard is them throwing another knife, aiming and throwing it, like they do in Braveheart and every other movie where somebody turns around and they go whoosh, and it hits, that's all I can see is swords flying everywhere. So it's especially important during times of strife, not just in your own family, with your own friends, but whatever is going on in the world. It just happens to be more inflamed now than it ever has. I mean, I call it a war zone. When I listen to stories of remember stories that my mom and grandma used to tell me of having lived through World War II and World War I, I'm like, my gosh, it would only, it would only take just a little bit to really get the whole world involved in something like that again. And people are literally warring with each other because of what's going on in the world. But the thing that I hope you guys can remember is everything you think, feel, say, and do is an electrical current. It is real. It is measurable. It is tangible. That is science. So every time you send hate out into the world, every time you make a negative judgment, every time you make a wish or an affirmation or a prayer or a spell, and you are assailing somebody. You are cutting them. You are, lopping off their head, spiritually, energetically. And so the suit of swords can go beyond. I mean, all of them can, but the ones that can cause damage, the wands and the swords, I would really encourage you guys to take some special time with these cards, because your feelings, your emotions, what's going on in the world, what's going on around you in your immediate circle, that can bear taking, another look at. So, Dayna, do you have anything else to add about the suit of swords?
Actually, I'm going to ask you a question, and depending on your answer, you'll either be teaching me a thing, or I'll be busting your chops. So the question is, when something's dead, is DED shorthand? Or was that an error? Because I'm like, wait a minute, is this slang that I don't know about? Hold on.
No. So that, I always say I'm not a social media person because I don't live my life on social media, but I do share memes and I do share articles and videos and that kind of thing, because that's what I want to share. But I know a lot more about social media really than I give myself credit for. And I picked it up off of social media. DED is really dead. So like in The Princess Bride, when he's not really dead, he's just mostly dead, right? So when you say someone is DEAD dead, they're just mostly dead. But when you say they are DED dead, they are dead.
Okay.
That's it. Gonzo, Dunzo. Yes.
Okay. Wait a minute. That's missing a letter.
Oh my God.
I think that's better. I got to call you on that one.
Yeah. Well, what you'll see a lot is, especially because I love to share funny memes. I mean, listen, you guys, I did stand-up comedy for years, and everybody's got coping mechanisms. My coping mechanism, no matter how dark something is to make, it always comes to me first, whatever the darkest, most macabre, humorous thing that will, I can't help it. It just pops into my head.
Oh, I'm so there.
I can't help it. I will turn to humor before I cry or I get raised to anger or whatever. There's got to be some. So I'm always sharing funny stuff. And I caught it because my friend Tanya Poss, she's got her own Witchy Poo page, and then she's moderator of a bunch of other Wiccan, pagan Witchy Poo pages. She posted one of the funniest things I've ever seen one day, and she wrote DED dead. And so I had to do the same thing. I pinged her on Facebook, and I was like, what does that mean? And she explained it. She's like, well, dead is really dead. DEAD is just kind of dead, but DED is for real dead. And, like when people say, you killed me, you're killing me, you're killing me. When people are making funny things, that's the evolution of that. It comes from, you're killing me, Larry, you're killing me, Smalls. It comes from that. So now you guys know, and Dayna, now you know. And so if you just see somebody post, on Twitter, Instagram, or DED.
I had to cut to the chase for that. See, I took my sword to that to find out the answer.
That's awesome. So,
editor's cut.
Right. Oh, that's funny. So, you know what? I only want to bring this up because when you said cut, I saw scissors, and I have seen scissors for swords before. I had a gal come to me one time. People will come to you for truly, deeply, like life and death kind of stuff. And I'm not saying this wasn't life or death for this woman, and I'm not saying it's a contest. But God knows this woman only wanted a reading for one reason. She wanted to know if she should become a quilter. And how it came to me was, I pulled some swords for her, but the swords turned into scissors. And then I saw scissors cutting fabric. And I was like, are you a sewer? Like, is that your hobby or your craft or your art? She goes, no, but I really want it to be. And I'm like, well, what's the hang up? I just don't know. I don't even know if I could be a good quilter or not. And I was like, what does it matter? What does it matter if you're having a good time? She goes, oh no. She said, in my family, you have to be perfect at anything you do. And then we uncovered this whole thing. Like she was so afraid of what her family would think, because her sister's an attorney and her dad's a doctor and her mom's a politician, and she became a regular old school teacher and they make fun of her. And I'm like, wow,
what's wrong with being a school teacher?
Anyway, but how we got to that whole thing with her was through the quilting. And in her mind, she just wanted to know if Spirit thought she would be a good quilter. What she didn't realize was that Spirit led her to that reading so she could become more empowered, and she could use that sword as a middle finger for her family, because that's what I told her. Like, you use your scissors as a middle finger to your family for making fun of you for being part of what shapes our young minds, and they go out into the world. And I was like, that's not psychic advice. That's Bernadette advice to give them the middle finger and use your scissors or your sword as the middle finger. But I when you said scissors, I was like, I want to tell everybody the story because, Lordy, in class, if I had a nickel for every student who's come to me and said, I had this client, I was reading for a friend or reading for a family, and I saw this really weird thing, so I didn't let it unfold. I didn't pursue it. And then they came to me with a story, a week later, a day later, a month later, a year later. And if I had just told them, if we had just, journeyed through that path together, but listen, we all do that, right? Like we all get, me, I try not to. Like me, I'm like, give them the middle finger with your scissors, right? I'm not as out there or renegade-ish as that might seem, but sometimes I am, right? So you've got to gauge what's appropriate for you, but never discount what's coming to your mind, because it could be the most critical thing. So for this woman who thought she was coming to get permission from spirit to quilt, or that she would be good at quilting, good enough for her family to respect, because it was all about feeling accepted, feeling loved, feeling safe, not ostracized from her tribe. It really was about that. And it had, the quilting was just the vehicle to get there, right? So anyway, so that wraps up, thus ends our sermon on the suit of swords and its meaning and its elements and its symbolism and its, numerology and its cardinal directions. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned. I hope you grew. I hope it's valuable for you. Dayna, thank you so much. I learn from you every time that we do these videos. You're just I just honor you and thank you so much. And
welcome.
Yeah, you guys don't forget, pick up Dayna's books. The links for them are in Amazon or on them. Lordy, their Amazon links are below in the notes. Book a reading with Dayna. Find her on Facebook under Dayna Winters, or book a reading through her website, luckyfrogtarot.com. If you don't have your copy of the Arcana Tarot and Oracle deck yet, and you love animals, please get this deck. There's 100 different animals in the main deck. There are 49 extra animals that you can get if you get the expansion packs, and it will take your connection to the world of animal spirit guides, spirit totem, and power animals to a whole new level. And if you have interest in interpreting dreams, having your dreams interpreted, learning how to do it, Dayna's books are so valuable for that, like crazy valuable. And of course, you can always book a reading for me. The link is also below in the notes section. And we just thank you so much. Your job now is to what? To stay wild. Take care, you guys.